Hello there, and welcome to Earth's History, where we examine the familiar with fresh eyes, where we question assumptions about our planet's most iconic features, where we ask whether the natural wonders and ancient monuments that define our world's geography might not be accidents of geology or achievements of known civilizations, but rather the deliberate constructions of an intelligence that predates recorded history by millions or even billions of years. Tonight, we're exploring one of the most provocative hypotheses in alternative archaeology and planetary engineering. What if Earth's major landmarks, the pyramids, the great mountains, the island chains, the continental configurations themselves, were not naturally formed or built by the civilizations we know, but were positioned, constructed, or modified by a first civilization so ancient that all memory of them has been erased by the vast stretches of geological time? If you've ever stood before the Great Pyramid and felt that its precision was too perfect for Bronze Age technology, if you've noticed that Earth's land masses fit together like puzzle pieces suggesting deliberate arrangement, if you've wondered why certain mountains seem geometrically regular, or why ancient sites align with astronomical precision that seems to require advanced knowledge, if you've sensed that some force beyond random chance has shaped our world's geography and marked it with monuments at key locations, you're touching on a possibility that transforms everything we think we know about Earth's history, about human origins, and about whether we're the first technological species to inhabit this planet, or merely the latest to discover a world already shaped by those who came before. Wherever you are right now, I hope you're comfortable, settled, ready to reconsider the planet beneath your feet, not as a random collection of geological accidents and human achievements, but as a designed world, a planet that has been engineered, marked, and left for us to decode like an enormous puzzle, waiting millions of years for someone intelligent enough to recognize the pattern. Maybe you're lying in bed thinking about the pyramids of Egypt and their counterparts in Mexico, China, and across the globe, wondering why pyramid building appeared independently in so many cultures. Maybe you're contemplating why ancient structures align with such precision to celestial events, or why certain landforms appear too regular to be natural, or why our ancestors left so few records of how they built their most impressive monuments. Perhaps because they didn't build them at all, but only discovered and occupied structures already ancient when they arrived. If this exploration into Earth as an engineered world changes how you see the landscapes around you, if it makes you wonder what messages might be encoded in the very shape of our continents and the placement of our mountains, if it inspires you to look at ancient monuments not as primitive achievements, but as rediscovered technology from a civilization so old we've forgotten they existed, I'd be grateful if you'd like the video, subscribe to the channel, or share it with someone else who understands that the deepest truths often hide in the most obvious places, waiting for someone to ask the right questions, so settle in. Let your breathing synchronize with the slow rhythms of geological time. Let your mind expand to consider that the world you know, its continents, its mountains, its monuments, its very shape, might have been designed with intention, marked with purpose, left as a message or a tool or a legacy by beings who walked or flew or swam on this planet when Earth was young, who achieved technological mastery we're only now beginning to approach, who left their marks in stone and landscape and planetary configuration, and whose existence has been hidden not by conspiracy, but by the simple passage of time so vast that even mountains erode, and continents drift, and all their achievements appear natural to eyes that don't know what to look for. And let's begin our investigation into whether Earth's landmarks, from the grandest mountain ranges to the most precise ancient structures, might be the products of the first civilization, and what recognizing this would mean for understanding who we are, where we came from, and what legacy we're inheriting from a past more ancient and more advanced than we've ever imagined. Defining the hypothesis. What is the first civilization? Before examining specific landmarks, let's clarify what we mean by first civilization and establish the hypothesis we're investigating. The core hypothesis: Earth has been inhabited by at least one technologically advanced civilization that predates known human history by millions or possibly billions of years. This first civilization achieved technological capabilities equal to or exceeding our own, and during their existence they modified Earth's geography at planetary scale, potentially influencing continental configurations, creating or modifying major geological features, establishing patterns in Earth's physical structure, constructed durable markers at significant locations, monuments, structures, or technological installations designed to survive geological timescales, serving as markers, tools, or messages for future intelligent species. Left, encoded information in the positioning and configuration of these landmarks, mathematical relationships, astronomical alignments, and geometric patterns that reveal themselves only to technological civilizations capable of global surveying and analysis, disappeared or went extinct before modern humans evolved, leaving their works to be discovered, misinterpreted as natural features, or mistakenly attributed to more recent civilizations. Who were they? The first civilization's identity is speculative, but possibilities include pre-human terrestrial species, intelligent species that evolved on Earth millions of years before humans, achieved technological civilization, then went extinct or left Earth. The Silurian hypothesis, proposed by NASA scientists Gavin Schmidt and Adam Frank, suggests that industrial civilizations from millions of years ago would leave minimal geological traces. Most evidence would erode away, making detection extremely difficult but not impossible. Early human or hominid civilization, anatomically modern humans, Homo sapiens, emerged approximately 300,000 years ago, but the Homo genus extends back 2-3 million years. What if an earlier species in our lineage, Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, or unknown cousins, achieved civilization 1 million or more years ago, then collapsed, with their descendants, us, eventually rediscovering and rebuilding on the ruins of this previous civilization? Non-terrestrial colonizers, extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional beings who visited Earth millions of years ago, established installations or conducted planetary engineering, then departed. Their structures would appear ancient and mysterious to humans who evolved long after they left. Survivors of previous Earth cycles. If Earth has undergone catastrophic resets, massive asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, or climate extremes that destroyed previous biospheres, civilizations might have arisen in previous stable periods, only to be destroyed when conditions changed. We might be living in the latest iteration of Earth civilization, unaware of previous iterations. Timeline considerations. For the first civilization to have left landmarks that still exist, we need to consider preservation over geological time. Surface structures, buildings and monuments erode. In temperate climates with rain and vegetation, stone structures show significant weathering in thousands of years and would be unrecognizable after millions of years. However, in extremely dry climates, deserts, or locations protected from weathering, caves, underwater, structures could potentially survive much longer. Geological features. Mountain ranges last tens of millions of years before eroding completely. Continental configurations can persist for hundreds of millions of years. If the first civilization modified geology, their works could survive essentially forever, as long as plate tectonics doesn't recycle the crust through subduction. Buried structures. Structures buried under sediment, sand, or ice could survive indefinitely, protected from weathering. As we dig or survey subsurface, we might discover constructions that are far older than surface structures. The most plausible timeline for a first civilization whose works remain visible is probably 10,000 to 10 million years ago, recent, enough that some structures could survive in protected locations, old enough that the civilization itself could have disappeared completely without leaving clear biological or technological evidence that mainstream archaeology would easily recognize. Why haven't we found clear evidence? This is the strongest argument against the hypothesis. If an advanced civilization existed on Earth for any significant period, shouldn't we find fossils of their species, artifacts and technology, modified geology and geochemistry, plastic, concrete, metal artifacts in geological strata, radioactive isotopes from nuclear technology? The counter-arguments. We have found anomalies, but interpret them as natural, or attribute them to known civilizations rather than recognizing them as products of the first civilization. Preservation is rare. Most of Earth's surface has been recycled through plate tectonics, eroded, or covered with sediment. Only a tiny fraction of ancient material preserves as fossils or artifacts. We haven't looked in the right places or ways, If you're not searching for something, you're unlikely to find it. Archaeology focuses on time periods where we expect to find human civilizations, last 10,000 years. Very few archaeologists search ancient geological strata for technological artifacts because mainstream science considers this pointless. Recognition problem. Highly weathered or degraded artifacts might not be recognizable as artificial. An eroded structure might look like a natural rock formation. Advanced materials we're unfamiliar with might be misidentified. With this framework established, let's examine specific landmarks and features that might be products of the first civilization. The pyramids. Global network or coincidence. Pyramids exist on every continent except Antarctica, and we haven't fully surveyed under Antarctica's ice, so perhaps there too. This global distribution of pyramid architecture is one of the most intriguing patterns in archaeology. Egyptian pyramids. The Giza Pyramid complex, particularly the Great Pyramid of Khufu, displays characteristics that some researchers argue exceed the capabilities of Bronze Age Egypt. Precision. The Great Pyramid's base is level to within 2 cm across 230 meters. The sides align to cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, with precision better than 0.05 degrees. The internal chambers contain granite blocks weighing 50-80 tons each, fitted with sub-millimeter precision. Scale. The Great Pyramid contains approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing 2 to 80 tons. Traditional Egyptology claims it was built in about 20 years during Pharaoh Khufu's reign, around 2560 BCE, which would require placing one block every 5 minutes, 24 hours a day for 20 years. Many researchers find this implausible without advanced technology. Mathematical encoding. The pyramid's dimensions encode mathematical constants. The ratio of perimeter to height approximates 2p, the circumference to radius ratio of a circle. The pyramid's latitude, 29,4 8 matches the speed of light in vacuum. 2,992,458 s. Skeptics call these coincidences. Alternative researchers see intentional encoding. Astronomical alignments. The pyramid's passages align with stellar positions, particularly Orion's belt stars, which some researchers, Robert Bovell's Orion correlation theory, argue demonstrate advanced astronomical knowledge. Water erosion theories. Some researchers, notably Robert Schoch, argue that the Sphinx shows water erosion patterns requiring thousands of years of heavy rainfall, which last occurred in Egypt around 9,000 to 10,000 BCE, long before traditional dating of the Giza complex. If true, the Sphinx, and possibly pyramids, would be far older than Egyptian civilization. First civilization interpretation. The pyramids might have been built by the first civilization millions of years ago as power plants. Some researchers, Christopher Dunn's Giza power plant theory, propose the Great Pyramid was a machine for generating or transmitting energy using acoustic resonance, piezoelectric effects in granite, and chemical reactions in internal chambers. Astronomical markers. Permanent monuments encoding positions, dates, or cosmic information. Beacons or communication devices. Structures for transmitting signals across distance or between Earth and other locations. Time capsules. Repositories of information, with chambers yet undiscovered containing records of the first civilization. Egyptians might have discovered these already ancient structures, cleared away sand and weathering, added their own decorations and burial chambers, and claimed them as their own, explaining why Egyptian records don't describe how pyramids were built, because they didn't build them, just refurbished them. Mesoamerican pyramids, Mexico, Guatemala, and Central America contain thousands of pyramids built by Maya, Aztec, and earlier cultures like the Olmec and Teotihuacan civilization. Teotihuacan. The Pyramid of the Sun and Pyramid of the Moon in Mexico display characteristics suggesting advanced planning. The complex is laid out on a grid aligned 15.5 degrees east of north, exactly aligned with the setting of the Pleiades star cluster on the date the city was supposedly founded. The city's layout incorporates units of measurement based on a Teotihuacan unit of 83 centimeters used consistently throughout the city. Underground chambers beneath the pyramids, only recently discovered through ground-penetrating radar, suggest the pyramids might be built over earlier structures or natural features the builders considered significant Mayan pyramids. Display astronomical sophistication. El Castillo at Chichen Itza creates a serpent shadow effect during equinoxes, requiring precise understanding of sun angles and mathematics. Similarity to Egyptian pyramids. The existence of pyramids on both sides of the Atlantic, built by cultures with no known contact, is explained by mainstream archaeology as convergent evolution. Pyramid shape is structurally stable and naturally develops independently. Alternative researchers argue this is too convenient and suggest either ancient contact between cultures or both cultures discovered and built upon even older pyramid sites established by the first civilization. First civilization interpretation. Pyramids globally might mark a network of positions with mathematical or energetic significance. Nodes in a planetary grid system established by the first civilization for unknown purposes, communication, energy transfer, geological stabilization, astronomical observations. Asian pyramids. China has over 100 known pyramids, mostly in Shanxi province. The Chinese government long restricted access and research, leading to speculation about what they might contain or represent. White Pyramid, Maoling. Largest Chinese pyramid, estimated 300 meters high, larger than Great Pyramid of Egypt. Officially considered tomb of Emperor Wu of Han, 140–87 BCE. But some researchers argue it's far older based on erosion patterns and local legends. Bosnian pyramids, controversial structures in Bosnia, identified by researcher Semir Osmanagic as pyramids. Mainstream archaeology considers them natural hills, but Osmanagic claims they're artificial structures from 12,000 plus years ago, predating all known civilizations in the region. The debate remains unresolved, with excavations showing precisely carved blocks and tunnels, but dating and interpretation disputed. Global pattern. If we plot all major pyramids on a world map, some researchers claim to see patterns: alignment with each other or with celestial features, placement at specific latitudes corresponding to mathematical ratios, distributions suggesting an intentional global network. Mainstream archaeology rejects these pattern claims as cherry-picking data, using flexible criteria to force false patterns, and ignoring pyramids that don't fit the pattern. The debate continues, but the global distribution of pyramid architecture across isolated cultures remains one of archaeology's genuine mysteries. Mountains and geological features, natural or modified. Now let's examine whether major geological features, mountains, valleys, island chains, might show evidence of artificial modification or placement by the first civilization. Mount Kailash, Tibet. Mount Kailash in the Tibetan Himalayas is sacred to 4 religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Bon, and has never been climbed. It displays unusual characteristics: symmetry. The mountain has 4 faces aligned roughly to cardinal directions, an unusual regularity for a natural peak. Each face is almost perfectly symmetrical. Shape. When viewed from certain angles, Kailash appears pyramidal, with straight edges and flat faces that seem artificially regular. Some researchers argue natural erosion wouldn't create such geometry. Geometric patterns. Satellite imagery reveals patterns of lines and shapes on the mountain's faces that some interpret as artificial. Anomalous aging. The mountain appears to have different erosion patterns than surrounding peaks, suggesting different age or composition. Magnetic anomalies. Some researchers report unusual magnetic field readings near Kailash, though these claims lack peer-reviewed verification. Legends. Local traditions describe Kailash as the center of the universe, the abode of gods, or a gateway to other dimensions, typical mythological explanations for a structure built by incomprehensible intelligence. First, civilization interpretation. Kailash might be an artificially modified mountain, with the first civilization either, carving a natural peak into regular geometry for unknown purposes, constructing a massive pyramid mountain using unknown technology. Building an internal structure, hollow mountain, with external rocky surface. The restriction on climbing and limited scientific access makes investigation difficult. Table Mountain, South Africa. Table Mountain in Cape Town displays a remarkably flat top, extending over 3 kilometers, so flat and level it appears artificial. Formation explanation. Mainstream geology explains the flat top through differential erosion. A resistant sandstone cap protects softer rock beneath, and erosion planed the top flat over millions of years. Alternative interpretation. The flatness seems too perfect. The entire top is within a few meters of the same elevation across kilometers. While erosion can create flat surfaces, the scale and precision seem unusual. Some researchers speculate the mountain was artificially modified, possibly with energy weapons or advanced excavation, to create a massive platform for purposes unknown, landing area, ceremonial space, or technological installation. Island chains and continental configurations. Earth's geography displays patterns that might indicate design rather than randomness. Continental fit. The coastlines of Africa and South America fit together like puzzle pieces, evidence for plate tectonics and continental drift, where the continents were once connected as Pangaea and split apart. But the precision of the fit is remarkable. Some researchers speculate that the first civilization either influenced where the supercontinent would break apart, using technology to establish fault lines, deliberately broke Pangaea apart as an engineering project, creating current continental configurations for specific purposes: climate management, ocean circulation, biological diversity. This is highly speculative, requiring technology capable of manipulating plate tectonics far beyond current human capability, but perhaps not beyond a civilization millions of years more advanced. Hawaiian Island chain forms a nearly straight line in the Pacific, each island progressively older, moving northwest, explained by volcanic hotspot activity as the Pacific plate moves over a stationary mantle plume. The chain's linearity is used to confirm plate tectonic theory. Alternative consideration: the straight line of islands is almost too perfect. Natural processes typically show more variation. Could the volcanic hotspot itself be artificial? A deliberate drilling or melting of the crust by the first civilization to create islands at specific locations? Mainstream geology would reject this, but if we allow for sufficiently advanced technology, modifying volcanic activity isn't inherently impossible. It's just beyond anything we can currently do or detect. The Great Rift Valley, Africa. The East African Rift is a massive geological feature, a tectonic plate boundary where the African continent is slowly splitting apart. The rift extends thousands of kilometers from Mozambique through East Africa to the Red Sea. Significance: the Rift Valley is where humanity evolved. Our oldest hominian fossils come from this region. The unique geography, varied elevations, habitats, climate variations, likely contributed to evolutionary pressures that shaped human intelligence. First civilization connection. If the first civilization wanted to engineer a location ideal for evolving intelligence, creating a rift valley would be an effective method. Creates diverse habitats in close proximity: forests, grasslands, mountains, rivers. Forces adaptation to changing conditions as the rift evolves. Concentrates resources and competition in a geographically defined area. Provides caves and sheltered areas for early humans. This is extremely speculative, but if we assume the first civilization wanted to create or guide the evolution of a successor species, modifying Earth's geology to create optimal conditions would be a plausible approach. Nazca lines and similar features. While not mountains, large-scale landscape modifications exist that require aerial perspective to appreciate. Nazca lines, Peru, massive geoglyphs in the desert. Lines, geometric shapes, and animal figures visible only from the air, created by removing reddish surface stones to reveal lighter ground beneath, dated to 500 BCE, 500 CE by mainstream archaeology. Purpose debate. Mainstream theories suggest astronomical calendars, ritual pathways, or water cult symbols. Alternative theories propose ancient aviators, Nazca people had hot air balloons or other aircraft, messages for gods or sky beings, markers for the first civilization, or extraterrestrial visitors. The precision and scale, some lines run for kilometers in perfectly straight lines, demonstrate impressive planning and surveying, but whether they exceed known Nazca capabilities is debated. Similar features globally. Geoglyphs exist in many locations: Chile, Atacama Desert; USA, California, Nevada; Middle East, Asia. The global distribution suggests this practice of creating landscape-scale art or messages was culturally widespread, or represents a universal impulse to mark the landscape in ways visible from above. First, civilization interpretation. These might be created by later civilizations imitating or responding to even larger, older landscape modifications by the first civilization. Features so old they've been mistaken for natural geology, with later peoples creating new geoglyphs alongside ancient ones, preserving a tradition whose origin was forgotten. Ancient structures, beyond known capabilities. Let's examine specific ancient structures that display characteristics some researchers argue exceed the capabilities of the civilizations credited with building them. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. Discovered in 1994, Göbekli Tepe revolutionized archaeology. This massive stone temple complex dates to approximately 9600 BCE, 11,600 years ago. Older than Stonehenge by 6,000 years, older than the pyramids by 7,000 years, built before agriculture and permanent settlements according to standard historical timelines. Characteristics: massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing 10 to 20 tons, carved with intricate animal reliefs. Circular arrangements of pillars forming enclosures, multiple layers. As new enclosures were built, older ones were deliberately buried. No evidence of habitation. Purely ceremonial or ritual site built by hunter-gatherers, supposedly. People without cities, agriculture, or, according to mainstream theory, the organizational capability to create such monuments. Orthodox interpretation, Göbekli Tepe, suggests that complex religious or social organization preceded agriculture rather than following it. The site motivated people to stay in one place, cooperate on construction, eventually leading to agriculture and civilization. Alternative interpretation, Göbekli Tepe might be a remnant of the first civilization, built when they existed, preserved through burial. Built by survivors or descendants of the first civilization, preserving knowledge and techniques from an earlier high-technology period. A human-built structure, but using tools, knowledge, or templates inherited from the first civilization. The dating, 11,600 years ago, corresponds roughly with the end of the last ice age and the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, a proposed comet or asteroid impact around 12,800 years ago that caused climate disruption and possibly destroyed a previous advanced civilization. Göbekli Tepe might have been built in the aftermath by survivors. Baalbek, Lebanon. The Roman temple complex at Baalbek contains the trilithon, 3 massive stone blocks in the foundation, each weighing approximately 800 tons. Nearby in the quarry lies the stone of the pregnant woman, weighing about 1,000 tons. Problem: moving and precisely placing 800-ton stones is difficult even with modern equipment. The Romans, who built the temple superstructure around 1st century CE, had impressive engineering, but stones this massive exceed known Roman capabilities. Orthodox explanation: the megalithic foundation predates the Roman temple, built by earlier Phoenician or even Bronze Age people. They used ramps, rollers, and immense labour forces. While difficult, it's theoretically possible with ancient technology given enough time and workers. Alternative interpretation: the megalithic foundation was built by the first civilization using advanced technology, anti-gravity devices, advanced metallurgy, or construction methods we don't understand. Later cultures, including Romans, built on these ancient foundations without understanding or being able to replicate the construction technique. The precision of stone placement, fitted so tightly that paper can't slide between stones, supports the advanced technology interpretation, though skilled stonemasons using simple tools can achieve remarkable precision given sufficient time. Pumapunku, Bolivia. Part of the Tiwanaku complex near Lake Titicaca, Pumapunku contains precisely cut and shaped stone blocks with characteristics that puzzle researchers. Precision. Blocks have flat surfaces and perfect right angles achieved with sub-millimeter precision. Some blocks have complex interlocking shapes, notches, grooves, and protrusions that fit together like modern prefabricated components. Material, made from diorite and andesite, hard stones difficult to carve even with iron tools. The Tiwanaku people, 500–1000 CE according to mainstream dating, supposedly used stone and bronze tools, but copper-bronze tools would struggle with these hard stones. Complexity. Some blocks appear to have been cut using advanced techniques, perfectly straight edges, complex 3D shapes, drilled holes with remarkable precision. Orthodox explanation. Skilled craftsmen using stone tools, sand abrasives, and copper tools for final finishing, along with extensive time and labour, could produce these results. The Tiwanaku were sophisticated engineers. Alternative interpretation. Pumapunku was built by the first civilization using advanced cutting tools, laser cutting, water jet cutting, or ultrasonic cutting, or by utilising natural properties of stone we don't understand, acoustic resonance to fracture stone along precise lines, chemical softening of stone, or other exotic techniques. The site's setting at high altitude, 13,000 feet, adds mystery. Why build such a massive complex in such a difficult location? Underwater structures. Several underwater sites contain features some researchers identify as artificial. Yonaguni, Monument, Japan, underwater rock formation off Yonaguni Island, discovered in 1987. Features include terraces, steps, and flat surfaces arranged in geometric patterns, right angles and straight edges, possible carved symbols or petroglyphs. Depth suggests it was above water 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, when sea levels were lower debate. Marine geologist Masaki Kimura argues it's artificial, a monument or city submerged when sea levels rose after the Ice Age. Mainstream geologists argue it's natural erosion creating regular patterns. The debate remains unresolved, but if artificial, it would be 10,000 plus years old, predating known Japanese civilization. Bimini Road, Bahamas. Underwater rock formation resembling a road or wall arranged in linear patterns. Discovered in 1968, some researchers claim it's an artificial structure from an ancient civilization, possibly Atlantis, while geologists argue it's natural beach rock formation. Dating and interpretation remain controversial. First civilization interpretation. If these underwater structures are artificial, they date to before sea level rise at the end of the Ice Age, 10,000 to 20,000 years ago or older, suggesting civilizations capable of construction existed before mainstream history recognizes any sophisticated cultures. These might be remnants of the first civilization or of cultures that inherited and preserved knowledge from the first civilization. Astronomical alignments, encoding knowledge in stone. Many ancient structures align with astronomical events, solstices, equinoxes, star positions, with precision that requires sophisticated astronomical knowledge. Stonehenge, England. The famous stone circle aligns with summer solstice sunrise and winter solstice sunset. Recent research shows it also tracked lunar cycles and might have been used as an astronomical calendar or calculator. Construction dates. Built in stages from about 3000 BCE to 2000 BCE during the Neolithic and Bronze Age. The sarsen stones, massive upright stones, weigh up to 50 tons each, transported from quarries 25 kilometres away. Purpose debate. Mainstream archaeology suggests ritual site, astronomical observatory, healing temple, or burial ground. Alternative researchers suggest more complex purposes: acoustic properties, creating standing waves, resonance effects, energy concentration, supposed ley lines converge at Stonehenge, ancient knowledge preservation, encoding mathematical and astronomical information in stone positions and dimensions. First civilization connection. Stonehenge might be built on a site selected by the first civilization for astronomical significance, with later Neolithic people discovering the location's importance and constructing the stone circle using knowledge inherited through oral tradition or by reverse engineering traces of older structures. Newgrange, Ireland. Older than Stonehenge, Newgrange is a massive passage tomb built around 3200 BCE. Its most remarkable feature, during winter solstice sunrise, sunlight enters through a specifically designed roof box and illuminates the inner chamber for exactly 17 minutes. Engineering. This effect requires precise alignment maintained over 5,000 plus years despite geological shifting. The passage tomb's construction, corbelled roof, watertight design, astronomical alignment, demonstrates sophisticated architecture and planning. First civilization interpretation. The winter solstice alignment might encode a specific date or astronomical configuration significant to the first civilization. Later, Neolithic people, discovering the site or inheriting knowledge of its importance, built the passage tomb to mark and celebrate the alignment wwithout fully understanding why it mattered. Angkor Wat, Cambodia. This massive temple complex, built in the 12th century CE by the Khmer Empire, displays astronomical and mathematical sophistication. Layout represents the Hindu cosmic mountain Meru, with 5 towers arranged to match the constellation Draco. The entire complex is a scale model of the universe in Hindu-Buddhist cosmology. Precession. The temple's alignment corresponds to the constellation positions not during construction, 12th century, but during an earlier epoch, around 10,500 BCE, according to some researchers, Robert Bovall and Graham Hancock. This suggests either the Khmer were aware of astronomical precession and encoded ancient star positions deliberately Angkor Wat was built on, or modelled after a much older site from 10 to 500 BCE mathematics. The temple's dimensions encode various mathematical constants and astronomical cycles. First civilization connection. If the precession alignment to 10,500 BCE is real, this is disputed. Angkor Wat might be built to preserve or commemorate a date significant to the first civilization, possibly when they existed, when they achieved certain milestones, or when they left Earth. Global patterns. When you examine astronomical alignments globally, some researchers claim to see patterns suggesting coordinated design, equinox alignments. Many ancient sites, pyramids, temples, stone circles, align to equinox sunrise or sunset. If these sites are plotted on a global map, some claim they form geometric patterns or align with each other. Latitude positions. Some sites sit at latitudes corresponding to mathematical ratios, fractions of Earth's polar radius, or encode specific numbers, speed of light, gravitational constant, astronomical unit. Star correlations. The Orion correlation theory proposes that the 3 Giza pyramids match the 3 stars of Orion's belt, with the Nile River representing the Milky Way. Similar star map correlations have been proposed for other ancient sites globally. Skeptical response. Critics argue that with thousands of ancient sites and countless stars and mathematical relationships possible, finding coincidental correlations is inevitable, the law of large numbers. Researchers cherry-pick data that fits their theories and ignore data that doesn't. The debate continues, but the sheer number of ancient sites with precise astronomical alignments suggest ancient peoples were sophisticated astronomers, or that they were following templates or instructions from the first civilization that emphasized astronomical precision. Ley lines and energy grids. Global networks. Some researchers propose that ancient sites aren't randomly distributed, but form networks of ley lines, or energy grids, geometric patterns connecting sacred sites globally. Ley lines, original concept. Alfred Watkins, a British amateur archaeologist, coined the term ley lines in 1921. He noticed that ancient sites in England, churches, stone circles, burial mounds, crossroads, often aligned in straight lines across the landscape. Watkins' interpretation: these alignments represented ancient trackways, straight roads or trade routes connecting settlements, with sacred sites marking the routes. Modern interpretation: later researchers, particularly in the New Age movement, reinterpreted ley lines as channels of earth energy, magnetic fields, or spiritual power. Ancient peoples supposedly built monuments at points where ley lines intersect, creating a global energy grid. Scientific assessment. Mainstream science rejects energy-based ley lines as pseudoscience, noting that no measurable energy corresponds to ley lines. Statistical analysis shows that apparent alignments are coincidental. With enough sites, straight-line alignments will occur by chance. The concept relies on subjective judgment about which sites to include and how much deviation from straight is allowed. However, the statistical arguments don't fully resolve the question. Some alignments do appear non-random, and the persistence of the idea across cultures suggests people perceive patterns in site placement. First, civilization interpretation. If the first civilization established a global network of installations, perhaps communication arrays, energy transmission systems, or geological monitoring stations, they would logically place them in geometric patterns optimized for their purposes. Later cultures, discovering these sites, would sense their significance through intuition, residual energy fields, or inherited knowledge, and build their own monuments on the same locations, preserving the network pattern without understanding its function. Specific proposed grid systems, Becker-Huygens. Grid. Researchers, William Becker and Bethy Huygens, 98ers, proposed that Earth's ancient sites and geological features align to an icosahedral dodecahedral grid, a geometric pattern based on platonic solids projected onto a sphere. They claim this grid explains the positions of ancient monuments and sacred sites, volcanic activity and tectonic plate boundaries, ocean current patterns, migration routes of animals. Evidence: some ancient sites do fall on grid vertices. Geological features show partial correlation with the grid. Criticism: the grid is flexible enough that almost any site can be made to fit if you adjust definitions and allow for some deviation. The correlation between grid and geological features is weak when statistically analysed. Hartmann and Curry grids, named after Drs. Ernst Hartmann and Manfred Curry, who proposed 1950s-60s that Earth has natural geomagnetic grids with spacing of approximately 2.5 metres, Hartmann, and 3.5 metres, Curry. Intersections of these grids supposedly create geopathic stress zones affecting human health. Scientific status: not accepted by mainstream science. No reproducible evidence for health effects or measurable geomagnetic patterns at these scales. Relevance: if these grids existed and were detectable by the first civilization with advanced instruments, they might have used them for positioning structures. Pyramids. Forming global patterns. Some researchers claim that pyramids globally form geometric patterns. The Great Pyramid's location encodes mathematical relationships to other pyramids. Lines connecting major pyramid sites form perfect geometric shapes, triangles, pentagons. Pyramid positions correlate with Earth's magnetic field or gravitational anomalies. Assessment: most specific claims in this area are numerological, finding patterns by manipulating numbers until correlations appear. However, the global distribution of pyramid architecture remains genuinely interesting, and whether underlying patterns exist beyond cultural diffusion remains an open question. Underground networks. Some researchers propose that ancient sites connect through underground tunnels, creating a subterranean network. Claimed examples: tunnels under the Giza Plateau connecting pyramids and the Sphinx European tunnels, allegedly thousands of kilometers, connecting megalithic sites South American chincanas, connecting Incan sites, Asian tunnel networks under sacred mountains. Evidence status: mostly anecdotal reports, local legends, and unverified explorer accounts. Some short tunnels exist at ancient sites, proven through excavation, but claims of thousands of kilometers-long tunnel networks lack archaeological confirmation. First civilization interpretation. If the first civilization built underground infrastructure for protection, transportation, or connecting installations, later cultures discovering tunnel entrances would create legends about the networks without necessarily understanding their true extent or original purpose. The Sphinx and geological dating controversies. The Great Sphinx of Giza presents one of the most significant dating controversies in archaeology and might be a key to understanding the first civilization. Orthodox dating. Mainstream Egyptology dates the Sphinx to the reign of Pharaoh Khafre around 2500 BCE, contemporary with the pyramids. Evidence includes a causeway connecting Khafre's pyramid to the Sphinx. The Sphinx's face allegedly resembles Khafre. No earlier Egyptian references to the Sphinx water erosion hypothesis. Geologist Robert Schoch examined the Sphinx in 1990 and concluded that the erosion patterns on the Sphinx enclosure, the trench carved into bedrock around the Sphinx, are consistent with water erosion, specifically rainfall, rather than wind and sand erosion. Implications. The last period of significant rainfall in Egypt ended around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, at the end of the African humid period. If the Sphinx shows water erosion, it must predate 10,000 years ago, 7,000 plus years older than mainstream dating suggests. Controversy. Egyptologists reject Schoch's conclusion, arguing the erosion patterns can be explained by wind, sand, and occasional water from Nile flooding chemical weathering, and salt crystallization creates similar patterns. No other Egyptian structures from 10,000 BCE exist, so why would the Sphinx? Counterarguments. Schoch responds that the erosion patterns differ distinctly from wind, sand erosion on nearby structures of known age. The Sphinx enclosure walls show vertical erosion channels consistent with rainfall runoff. Other geologists examining the site agree with water erosion assessment. Dating resolution. The debate remains unresolved. Some researchers suggest a compromise. The Sphinx body might be much older, carved from a natural outcrop in prehistoric times, while the head was recarved in dynastic times. Explaining why the head appears disproportionately small, it was originally a larger lion or other head, then recarved to resemble a pharaoh. First civilization connection. If the Sphinx is 10,000 plus years old, it predates known Egyptian civilization and Göbekli Tepe, making it one of the oldest monuments on Earth. This suggests possibility 1. A sophisticated pre-dynastic civilization existed in Egypt around 10,000 BCE, capable of monumental stone carving, which later collapsed or was destroyed, possibly by climate change as the Sahara dried out. Dynastic Egypt rediscovered and restored the Sphinx thousands of years later. Possibility 2. The Sphinx was built by the first civilization at a much earlier date, potentially millions of years ago, carved when Egypt had different climate, wetter, supporting the rainfall erosion, then later discovered by dynastic Egyptians who modified and claimed it. Hall of Records. Psychic Edgar Cayce claimed in the 1930s that a Hall of Records chamber exists beneath the Sphinx, containing records of Atlantis and ancient wisdom. This claim has motivated numerous researchers to request permission to excavate beneath the Sphinx. Seismic surveys, ground-penetrating radar and seismic studies in the 1990s detected cavities beneath the Sphinx's pores. Egyptian authorities confirmed these exist but claim they're natural and empty, denying requests for excavation. Speculation. If the first civilization built the Sphinx, they might have included chambers beneath it containing technological archives, artifacts, or records of their civilization. A time capsule designed to be discovered when a future civilization achieved sufficient advancement to search for it. The Egyptian government's resistance to excavation fuels speculation that they know what's there and consider it too controversial to reveal they're protecting the site from damage during excavation. Political considerations, national pride, religious sensitivities, prevent investigation, the inventory. Stela. A stone tablet found at Giza called the Inventory Stela contains inscriptions claiming that Pharaoh Khufu, who supposedly built the Great Pyramid, found the Sphinx already ancient and buried in sand, and that he conducted restoration rather than original construction. Mainstream Egyptology dismisses this stela as a later forgery. New Kingdom era, 1500 BCE, describing Old Kingdom events, to 500 BCE, created to enhance the antiquity of Giza's monuments for religious or political purposes. Alternative researchers argue the stela might preserve genuine tradition of the Sphinx predating dynastic Egypt. Synthesis. The Sphinx represents the strongest single piece of evidence that structures much older than recorded history exist. The water erosion evidence, while disputed, hasn't been definitively refuted. If accepted, it requires rewriting early human history and considering that monumental architecture existed in prehistoric times, consistent with the first civilization hypothesis. Antarctica. The frozen evidence. Antarctica, Earth's least explored continent, might hold crucial evidence of the first civilization preserved under ice. Ice-free Antarctica. Antarctica wasn't always frozen. The continent has moved geographically due to plate tectonics and has experienced different climates. 55 million years ago, Eocene. Antarctica was temperate with forests and diverse fauna. No ice sheets existed. 34 million years ago, ice sheets began forming as the climate cooled and Antarctica drifted further south. 2.5 million years ago, present. Antarctica fully glaciated with ice up to 4.7 kilometers thick. Implications. Any structures built on Antarctica before glaciation would be buried under kilometers of ice, preserved but inaccessible. If the first civilization existed tens or hundreds of millions of years ago, Antarctica might contain their best preserved installations. Piri Reis Map, a 1513 CE map by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, shows the Atlantic Ocean, including a southern landmass, interpreted by some researchers as Antarctica's coastline, accurately mapped despite Antarctica not being officially discovered until 1820 CE. Controversy. The map's source is debated. Piri Reis claimed to use ancient maps, including charts from the Library of Alexandria. Some researchers, Charles Hapgood, argue the map shows Antarctica's coastline as it appeared before glaciation, requiring the source maps to be many thousands of years old. Skeptical response. The map's accuracy is debated. The southern continent might be a misrepresented South America, or a theoretical Terra Australis that cartographers included for symmetry. The precise identification with Antarctica's actual coastline beneath the ice is questionable. Subglacial features. Satellite radar mapping reveals subglacial features including subglacial lakes, over 400 lakes beneath Antarctic ice, largest being Lake Vostok, 250 km long, 50 km wide, 1 km deep, sealed under 4 km of ice for millions of years. These lakes might contain ancient microbial life isolated since before glaciation. Mountain ranges. Gamburtsev mountain range, completely buried under ice, comparable to the Alps in scale, with unusual features suggesting non-glacial erosion, rivers, valleys, from when Antarctica was ice-free. Possible artificial features. Some Antarctic researchers and satellite image analysts claim to identify geometric features, linear structures, or circular formations that appear artificial. These claims are highly controversial and largely dismissed as misinterpretations of natural geology or image artifacts. Antarctic Treaty and Restricted Access. The Antarctic Treaty, 1961, designates Antarctica for peaceful scientific research, with territorial claims frozen. Military activities are prohibited. All activities require authorization. Conspiracy theories. Some researchers argue the treaty's true purpose is controlling access to discoveries, specifically ruins or artifacts of ancient civilizations, including the first civilization that world governments have found but keep secret. Mainstream response. The treaty's purpose is preventing militarization and resource conflicts, ensuring international scientific cooperation. Secrecy would be impossible with dozens of nations operating research stations and satellites imaging the continent. First civilization in Antarctica. If the first civilization existed 50+ million years ago when Antarctica was habitable, they might have established cities or installations there. These would be perfectly preserved under ice, awaiting discovery. Challenges to investigation. Depth. Ice thickness up to 4.7 km makes excavation extraordinarily difficult. Cost. Drilling through ice to bedrock costs millions per site. Treaty restrictions. Large-scale excavation might violate Antarctic treaty danger. Drilling into subglacial lakes risks contaminating pristine ecosystems. Future exploration. As ice-penetrating radar technology improves and climate change, unfortunately, causes ice loss, more subglacial features will be revealed. The next century might see major Antarctic discoveries, the mathematical Earth, encoded dimensions. Some researchers propose that Earth's dimensions, rotational period, and orbital characteristics encode mathematical information, suggesting the planet itself was engineered or modified by the first civilization. Earth's dimensions. Earth is not a perfect sphere but an oblate spheroid, flattened at poles, bulging at equator due to rotation. Measurements. Equatorial radius, 6,378.137 km polar radius, 6,356.752 km mean radius, 6,371 km circumference at equator, 40,075 km. The Great Pyramid and Earth dimensions. The Great Pyramid's dimensions allegedly encode Earth's dimensions at a scale of 1/43,200. Pyramid height, 146.7 meters, original with capstone. Earth's polar radius, 6,356, 752 meters. Ratio, 6,356, 752, 146.7, 43,200. Pyramid base perimeter, 921.5 meters. Four sides of 230 to 375 mm. Earth's equatorial circumference, 475,000 meters. Ratio, 475,000, 921.5, 43,481, close to 4,200. The number 43,200 is significant. 43,200 seconds is 12 hours, 132,000 years, half a precession cycle, Earth's axial precession period. 432 appears in various ancient texts and mythologies. Skeptical response. The ratios work only if you choose specific measurements and units. Pyramids have been measured differently by different researchers. Using different measurement points or excluding the capstone gives different results. The ratios might be coincidental rather than intentional encoding. Alternative interpretation. If the ratios are intentional, they demonstrate that the pyramid's builders, whether ancient Egyptians, predecessor civilizations, or the first civilization, knew Earth's dimensions with precision. This is surprising if the builders were Bronze Age people without global surveying capability. but expected if the builders were the first civilization with advanced technology. Earth's rotation and orbit. Earth's rotational period and orbital characteristics also show interesting numerical relationships. Precession of equinoxes. Earth's axis wobbles like a spinning top, completing one cycle every 920 years. Number varies slightly depending on measurement method. Estimates range from 25,772 to 25,920 years. The number 72, precession, moves Earth's axis by 1 degree every 72 years. The number 72 appears frequently in ancient mythology and sacred architecture. 72 demons in the Goetia. 72 names of God in Kabbalah. 72 disciples of Confucius. 72 conspirators against Osiris in Egyptian mythology. 72 steps in many temple structures. This consistency suggests ancient cultures encoded precession knowledge in mythology and architecture. But why? And who taught them about precession? First, civilization explanation. The first civilization, having existed for potentially millions of years, would intimately understand astronomical cycles, including precession. They might have encoded this knowledge in mythology, architecture, and even in Earth's monuments, ensuring the information would survive their civilization's end and be available to future intelligent species. Orbital resonances. Earth's orbit shows mathematical relationships with other planets' orbits. 8 Earth years, 13 Venus years, 8:13 ratio Fibonacci numbers. 2 Jupiter orbits. 5 Saturn orbits, 2.5 ratio. Various other near resonances between planetary orbits, natural or designed. Orbital resonances occur naturally through gravitational interactions. Planets gravitationally influence each other over millions of years, and resonances are stable configurations that systems naturally evolve toward. However, if the first civilization possessed technology for modifying planetary orbits through gravitational manipulation or repeated small adjustments over millennia, they might have tuned the solar system's orbital configuration to precise mathematical ratios for purposes we don't understand, perhaps creating a giant orrery or cosmic clock encoding information in planetary positions. This is highly speculative, requiring technology far beyond ours, but if we're considering a civilization millions of years old, such capabilities might be plausible. Submerged cities, rising seas, and lost civilizations. Global sea levels have varied dramatically over geological time, particularly during ice ages. During the last glacial maximum, 20,000 years ago, sea levels were 120 meters lower than today. Vast areas of current continental shelves were dry land, approximately 8% more land area globally. Implications: any coastal civilizations from 10,000 plus years ago would now be underwater. If the first civilization, or their immediate successors, built cities on coastlines, those cities are submerged. Doggerland, North Sea. During the Ice Age, Britain was connected to continental Europe via Doggerland, a low-lying plain now beneath the North Sea. Doggerland was inhabited by hunter-gatherers and possibly supported more complex societies. Around 6,500 past 6200 BCE, Doggerland was submerged by rising seas following the Ice Age and possibly catastrophically flooded by a tsunami, Storegga Slide, a massive underwater landslide off Norway. Archaeological evidence: fishing boats occasionally drag up artifacts, tools, bones, worked wood from Doggerland, confirming human habitation. Systematic surveys using sonar have mapped submerged landscapes and possible settlement sites. First civilization connection. If sophisticated civilization existed in Doggerland before flooding, evidence is now underwater, preserved in seafloor sediments but largely inaccessible to archaeology. Sunderland, Southeast Asia. During low sea levels, much of Southeast Asia's continental shelf was exposed, connecting Indonesia, Malaysia, and surrounding islands into a large landmass called Sunderland. Sunderland likely supported substantial human populations and might have been a centre of early culture. Rising seas after the Ice Age submerged this region. Recent discoveries: underwater surveys off Indonesia and the Andaman Islands have found submerged landscapes with features resembling terraces, roads, and structures, though interpretations vary and few sites have been thoroughly investigated. Black Sea flood. Hypothesis: geologists Walter Pittman and William Ryan proposed that the Black Sea was originally a freshwater lake before the 700 years ago, that catastrophically flooded when Mediterranean seawater breached a natural dam at the Bosporus Strait, raising the Black Sea level by 100 metres over perhaps 1-2 years. Implications: civilizations around the Black Sea shores would have been inundated. This event might be the historical basis for flood myths in the region: Noah's flood, Gilgamesh flood narrative. Archaeological evidence. Underwater surveys by Robert Ballard found submerged structures and settlements on the Black Sea floor, confirming habitation before flooding. Mediterranean and Atlantic. Various underwater sites around the Mediterranean and Atlantic coasts have been identified as possible artificial structures. Yonaguni Monument, previously mentioned, Bimini Road, previously mentioned, Gulf of Cambay, India. Sonar imaging showed what appeared to be a submerged city, but subsequent investigations were inconclusive Cuba underwater formations. Deep sonar imaging found geometric features that some interpret as structures, but lack of detailed investigation leaves this unconfirmed Mediterranean sites. Various ancient harbours, structures and possible cities submerged by tectonic subsidence or sea level rise challenge. Underwater archaeology is expensive and difficult. Most seafloor remains unexplored. Distinguishing artificial structures from natural geological formations underwater is challenging without detailed investigation, and funding for such investigations is limited. First civilization hypothesis. If the first civilization existed millions of years ago, their coastal cities would have been submerged and re-exposed multiple times as sea levels fluctuated through Ice Age cycles. The most recent submersion, post-Ice Age flooding, 10,000, 20,000 years ago, buried the most recent layer of evidence, but structures might exist at various depths on continental shelves, representing different time periods of habitation. Systematic seafloor surveying might reveal patterns, multiple layers of ruins at different depths, showing episodic habitation separated by flooding events, with the deepest, oldest layers representing the first civilization. Genetic evidence, human, anomalies, and lost populations. If the first civilization was a hominid species, human ancestors or cousins, their genetic legacy might persist in modern human DNA. Human genetic diversity. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, show relatively low genetic diversity compared to many species, suggesting our population passed through one or more bottlenecks, where numbers dropped dramatically, reducing genetic variation. Toba catastrophe theory. Around 74,000 years ago, the Toba supervolcano in Indonesia erupted, the largest volcanic eruption in 2 million years. The eruption caused a volcanic winter, with global temperatures dropping 3°C for years. Genetic studies suggest human population dropped to perhaps 310,000 individuals during this period, a severe bottleneck that reduced genetic diversity. Alternative interpretation. If humans were more populous and diverse before Toba, the bottleneck might have destroyed not just population numbers, but entire human cultures and civilizations. If proto-civilizations existed 100,000 years ago, using stone tools, controlled fire, early agriculture, symbolic art, the Toba eruption might have destroyed them, forcing survivors back to basic subsistence, with civilization needing to be rediscovered tens of thousands of years later. Archaic human introgression. Modern human genomes contain DNA from archaic human species we interbred with. Neanderthals, 1–2% of non-African human genomes. Denisovans, up to 5% in Melanesian and Aboriginal Australian genomes. Unknown, archaic humans. African genomes show evidence of introgression from unidentified archaic species. Implications. Multiple human species coexisted and interbred. Some of these species, particularly Denisovans, known only from tiny bone fragments and DNA, might have been more advanced or had different capabilities than currently recognized. Speculative extension. If an earlier hominid species achieved civilization, Homo erectus, which existed for 2 million years, or Homo heidelbergensis, which had large brains, modern humans might carry small amounts of their DNA. Traits like rapid language acquisition, abstract thinking, or technological innovation might be partially inherited from this earlier civilized species. The aquatic ape hypothesis. Anatomist Elaine Morgan proposed that some human features, subcutaneous fat, minimal body hair, descended larynx, breath control for speech, are adaptations to semi-aquatic lifestyle. humans evolve spending significant time in water, coastal rivers, lakes. Mainstream anthropology largely rejects this hypothesis, but if partially true, it might suggest coastal first civilization populations that spent considerable time in water, fisherfolk harbour cities, maritime cultures, with modern humans inheriting some of those adaptations. FOXP2 gene. The FOXP2 gene is associated with language capability. Humans have a version, slightly different from chimpanzees and other primates. The human version appeared roughly 200,000–300,000 years ago. Interestingly, Neanderthals also had the human version of FOXP2, suggesting sophisticated communication capability. First civilization connection. If language capability is older than currently believed, and if archaic humans had complex language, they might have had the cognitive capability for civilization far earlier than mainstream timelines suggest. Mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosome Adam. Genetic studies trace modern human mitochondrial DNA, inherited through maternal line, to mitochondrial Eve, a woman who lived roughly 150,000–200,000 years ago in Africa. Similarly, Y chromosome DNA traces to Y chromosome Adam roughly 200,000–300,000 years ago. Clarification: these aren't the first humans or only humans at those times. They're simply the individuals whose mitochondrial just Y chromosome lines survived to present while all other lineages died out. First civilization interpretation. If the first civilization existed 1–2 million years ago, composed of Homo erectus or other early hominids, their direct genetic line might have gone extinct or been absorbed through interbreeding. Modern humans might be descended from survivor populations that didn't participate in the first civilization, with only fragmentary genetic or cultural memory preserved. Cultural memory, mythology as historical record. If the first civilization existed, might human mythology preserve distorted memories of them? The Atlantis tradition, Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, 360 BCE, describe Atlantis, an advanced island civilization that existed 9,000 years before Plato's time, just 600 BCE, and was destroyed in a catastrophic event, flooding, sinking. Orthodox interpretation: Plato invented Atlantis as a literary device to illustrate philosophical points about ideal societies and their decline. No historical Atlantis existed. Alternative interpretations: Atlantis represents a real prehistoric civilization destroyed by rising sea levels or geological catastrophe. Atlantis is a cultural memory of the first civilization, with details distorted through millennia of oral transmission before Plato recorded them. Atlantis conflates multiple historical events: Minoan civilization destroyed by Thera eruption, 1600 BCE, Doggerland flooding, other ancient disasters. Evidence search. Numerous locations have been proposed for Atlantis: Mediterranean, Atlantic, Antarctica, etc. No conclusive evidence has been found, but given that Plato placed it 9,000 years before his time, 11,600 years ago, any remains would be underwater or deeply buried. First civilization connection. If we interpret 9,000 years before Plato as symbolic for very ancient times rather than specific dating, Atlantis might represent cultural memory of the first civilization, a technologically advanced society that existed in prehistory, achieved wonders, then was destroyed, leaving only legends. The Golden Age myth. Many cultures describe a primordial golden age when humanity lived in harmony, possessed great wisdom, or was closer to the gods. This paradise was lost through human failing, pride, disobedience, conflict, leading to decline into current imperfect state. Examples: Greek Golden Age under Kronos Biblical Garden of Eden, Hindu Satya Yuga, Perfect Age, Chinese 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors period, Mesoamerican previous worlds destroyed in cycles standard interpretation. These myths reflect universal human longing for simpler times and serve moralizing purposes, explaining why life is difficult, teaching values. Alternative interpretation. Golden Age myths might preserve memory of the first civilization's apex, a time when technology was advanced, life was easier, knowledge was greater. The fall represents the civilization's collapse or departure, leaving descendants in a genuinely worse situation than their ancestors, creating a cultural memory of lost greatness. Builder gods and cultural heroes. Many mythologies describe gods or heroes who taught human civilization. Oannes, Mesopotamia. Fishman who emerged from sea, taught astronomy, writing, agriculture. Quetzalcoatl, Mesoamerica. Feathered serpent god who brought civilization and knowledge. Viracocha, Andes. Creator deity who travelled teaching people. Thoth, Egypt. God of wisdom who invented writing and taught humans. Prometheus, Greece. Titan who stole fire and gave it to humans along with civilization, arts, standard interpretation. Personification of cultural development, explaining how humans acquired knowledge and technology. Alternative interpretation, cultural memory of actual individuals from the first civilization or their immediate successors who taught less advanced humans agriculture, astronomy, metallurgy, writing. These teachers, being more advanced, appeared godlike to primitive humans, becoming deified in memory. Flood myths. Over 200 cultures worldwide have flood myths, stories of catastrophic flooding that destroyed previous civilizations, with only a few survivors who repopulated the world. Examples: Noah, biblical and Quranic; Utnapishti, Epic of Gilgamesh; Deucalion, Greek; Manu, Hindu; Yu the Great, Chinese; various Native American, Aboriginal, Pacific Islander, African flood stories; standard interpretation, universal human experience of catastrophic local flooding; river valleys, storm surges, tsunamis, leads independently to flood myths. The universality reflects shared human experience, not a single historical event. Alternative interpretation. Flood myths preserve memory of actual global catastrophe, possibly post-Ice Age flooding 10,000, 20,000 years ago as ice melted and sea levels rose 120 meters, submerging coastal civilizations. The Black Sea flood 500 years ago. Catastrophic comet or asteroid impact causing tsunami and global flooding. Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. If the first civilization or their immediate successors were coastal peoples, as most civilizations are due to trade and resource access, global flooding would have destroyed their cities, with only inland or highland survivors remaining to pass down stories of the catastrophe. The lost wisdom tradition. Many esoteric traditions claim to preserve ancient wisdom from lost civilizations. Hermetic tradition claims descent from ancient Egyptian wisdom. Thoth, Hermes Trismegistus. Kabbalah, Jewish mystical tradition claiming ancient origins. Alchemy claims inheritance of ancient knowledge about matter, transformation. Sacred geometry, knowledge of geometric principles used in temple construction. These traditions claim their knowledge is far older than historical records suggest, preserved through oral transmission, secret societies, or encoded in symbols and rituals. Skeptical assessment. Most ancient wisdom can be traced to specific historical origins, Hermeticism to Hellenistic Egypt, Kabbalah to medieval Jewish scholars, etc. Claims of greater antiquity are typically unsupported. Alternative assessment. Core insights might indeed be ancient, rediscovered or preserved from the first civilization, with later practitioners adding layers of interpretation, mysticism, and false antiquity claims. Distinguishing history from myth. The challenge is determining which myths preserve actual historical memories and which are pure invention or symbolic teaching. Criteria suggesting historical basis. Specificity, detailed descriptions of places, technologies, or events. Consistency, same events described across multiple independent cultures. Anachronism, myths, describing knowledge or capabilities that seem beyond the culture's supposed abilities. Geological correlation, myths matching known geological events, floods, impacts, volcanic eruptions. Applying these criteria, some myths, particularly flood narratives and descriptions of astronomical knowledge in ancient texts, might preserve genuine historical memories, possibly including memories of the first civilization. The technological residue, artifacts out of time. If the first civilization existed and possessed advanced technology, occasional artifacts might survive in geological strata, though most would be destroyed or weathered beyond recognition. Parts, out-of-place artifacts. These are objects allegedly found in archaeological or geological contexts that seem too advanced for their time period. Most turn out to be hoaxes, misidentifications, or contamination, modern objects in old contexts. Examples of claimed parts: Baghdad Battery, Clay pots with copper cylinders and iron rods from Mesopotamia, 250 BCE, claim to be ancient batteries, mainstream. Archaeology interprets them as scroll storage containers. Testing shows they could function as batteries if filled with acidic solution, but purpose remains debated. Antikythera mechanism, bronze-geared device from 100 BCE, recovered from shipwreck off Greek island of Antikythera. Functions as sophisticated astronomical calculator, predicting planetary positions and eclipses. This is a legitimate ancient technology far more complex than previously believed possible for the era, showing ancient Greeks had clockwork engineering capability. Ancient precision tools. Some ancient metalwork shows precision suggesting advanced tools. Holes drilled in hard stone with perfectly circular cross-sections, surfaces ground flat to high tolerances, etc. The Antikythera mechanism is proof that ancient civilizations were sometimes more technologically sophisticated than we assume. It doesn't prove the first civilization, but it demonstrates that technological capability can exist in primitive eras and be lost. No similar devices are known for over 1,000 years after the Antikythera mechanism. Impossible fossils. Occasionally, reports emerge of modern-looking objects found in ancient rock. Examples: metallic objects, nails, screws, tools, allegedly found in coal seams or rock formations, millions of years old footprints or tool marks in ancient strata assessment. Virtually all these cases, when investigated, turn out to be hoaxes, objects planted in rock, misidentifications, natural formations resembling artificial objects, contamination, modern objects getting into drill cores or excavations from other sources, incorrect dating, the strata aren't as old as claimed. No scientifically verified case exists of a modern technological artifact in geological strata millions of years old. This strongly suggests that no technological civilization existed on Earth in the deep past, or that their artifacts completely disintegrated. Why artifacts don't survive? Materials have different preservation potentials. Stone survives millions of years if protected from erosion. The first civilization's stone structures and tools could theoretically still exist. Ceramics, highly durable. Pottery shards survive tens of thousands of years easily. Ancient ceramics could persist. Metals. Most metals oxidize or corrode over thousands to millions of years. Iron rusts completely. Copper and bronze corrode. Gold and platinum resist corrosion but are rare. After millions of years, most metal artifacts would be unrecognizable as worked metal. Plastics and synthetics. Modern materials like plastics break down over centuries to millennia. Even if the first civilization used similar materials, they'd be gone after millions of years. The preservation problem. If the first civilization existed 10+ million years ago, almost nothing would survive except stone structures in geologically stable locations, possible subsurface installations protected from weathering geological modifications, quarries, excavations, modified landscapes, geochemical signatures, isotopic anomalies from nuclear technology, chemical compounds from industry. We should look for these subtle traces rather than expecting to find intact machinery or buildings. The Silurian hypothesis, detectability of ancient civilizations. In 2018, NASA climate scientist Gavin Schmidt and astrophysicist Adam Frank published a thought experiment called the Silurian hypothesis, named after the intelligent reptiles in Doctor Who. The question: if an industrial civilization existed on Earth millions of years ago, would we detect it in the geological record? Their analysis. They examined what traces human industrial civilization, past 200 years, will leave in rock strata millions of years from now. Geochemical signatures, carbon isotope anomaly. Burning fossil fuels releases carbon with distinctive isotopic ratio, depleted in C13. This creates a spike in C12-C13 ratio in sediments during industrial period. Radioactive isotopes. Nuclear testing since 1945 created isotopes: plutonium-239, cesium-137, carbon-14 spike, that will remain detectable for thousands to millions of years. Heavy metals and plastics. Industrial pollutants create chemical anomalies in sediment layers. Nitrogen cycle disruption. Industrial nitrogen fixation, Haber-Bosch process for fertilizer, changes nitrogen isotope ratios globally. biological signatures, mass extinction. Human activity is causing species extinctions at rates comparable to major mass extinctions in geological record. This will be visible as sudden drop in biodiversity and fossil record. Domesticated species. Fossils of domesticated animals and plants appear suddenly and in unusual locations. Chickens worldwide, wheat fields on every continent. Physical artifacts. Most buildings, roads, objects will erode away within millions of years. Some very durable materials might persist. Ceramics in protected locations, gold objects. Buried objects, landfills, foundations might survive longer. Their conclusion: after 10 million years, most direct evidence of human civilization would be gone, but we'd leave a thin but distinct geological spike layer showing isotopic anomalies, extinction event, chemical pollutants, possibly some buried artifacts. A geologist 10 million years from now might detect this layer and infer something unusual happened, possibly recognizing it as industrial activity but might not be certain. After 100 million years, even these signatures would be weak and difficult to detect. After 500 million years, they'd be nearly impossible to find unless you knew exactly where and what to look for. Implications for the first civilization. If the first civilization existed 100 million years ago, detecting them would be very difficult. We'd need to sample sediments from the right time period, analyze for subtle isotopic or chemical anomalies, distinguish first civilization signatures from natural geological events. Volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, etc. can also create chemical anomalies. Have we found such signatures? The Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, PETM, 56 million years ago shows rapid carbon release, carbon isotope excursion, global warming, ocean acidification, some species extinctions. Could this be evidence of ancient industrial civilization? Mainstream explanation: massive carbon release from volcanic activity, methane release from ocean floor, or other natural processes. Alternative consideration: the PETM's carbon release is similar in scale to what human industrial activity is causing. If an ancient civilization industrialized 56 million years ago, it might create exactly this geological signature. Problem: distinguishing industrial civilization from natural carbon release requires additional evidence. Isotopic ratios specific to fossil fuel burning, evidence of technology, etc. The PETM data doesn't show the specific signatures we'd expect from industry, so natural explanation remains most likely. But Schmidt and Frank's point stands. Ancient industrial civilizations might be nearly impossible to detect, especially if they were brief, a few thousand years, compared to geological timescales. Living with the hypothesis, implications and meaning. As we near this section's conclusion, let's consider what it would mean, personally, culturally, philosophically, if Earth's landmarks were indeed placed by the first civilization. Identity crisis. Human exceptionalism would be shattered. We're not the first intelligence on Earth, not the first to wonder about existence, not the first to build monuments or develop technology. We're merely the latest iteration, walking on a planet shaped by predecessors we've forgotten. This could be humbling, recognizing we're not as special as we thought, inspiring, proving that intelligence can arise, thrive, and create lasting works, terrifying, wondering why they failed and whether we'll repeat their fate. Rewriting history. Every history textbook would need revision. Human civilization wouldn't begin 10,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. It would be the rediscovery or continuation of something far older. Ancient monuments wouldn't be impressive achievements of primitive peoples, but rediscoveries or restorations of incomprehensibly ancient structures. Our ancestors wouldn't be ignorant primitives we've surpassed, but wise discoverers who reverse-engineered ancient technology and preserved its knowledge in mythology and architecture. Archaeological Renaissance. Recognizing the first civilization would revolutionize archaeology. New focus on geological timescales and preservation in unusual locations. Systematic surveys of anomalous features dismissed by current archaeology. Development of techniques to detect and analyze extremely ancient artifacts. Multidisciplinary collaboration, archaeology, geology, engineering, astronomy. Sites currently dismissed or ignored would become crucial. Remote locations, Antarctica, deep ocean, high mountains, would receive intense attention. Technological inheritance. If we could decode the first civilization's knowledge, encrypted in monuments' dimensions, alignments, and positions, we might inherit Energy technologies. If pyramids functioned as power plants or energy transmitters, reverse engineering them could provide clean energy. Construction techniques. Methods for moving and precisely shaping massive stones could revolutionize engineering astronomical knowledge. Information about cosmic cycles, potentially including knowledge of planetary engineering or astronomical threats. Warnings. Information about what destroyed the first civilization, possibly helping us avoid similar fate. This inheritance could accelerate human development dramatically, or could provide dangerous knowledge we're not ready to handle responsibly. The responsibility. If we're inheriting a planet shaped by the first civilization, we become stewards of their legacy. Destroying ancient sites wouldn't just be vandalism of human heritage, but destruction of works potentially millions of years old, irreplaceable information. We'd have ethical obligation to preserve and protect ancient sites, study them carefully before any modification, decode their messages or purposes, ensure their knowledge passes to future generations. The question of contact. If the first civilization still exists somewhere, underground, in space as digital consciousness, discovering their works might lead to contact. They might have left automated systems monitoring for intelligent species achieving certain milestones: global surveying capability, space travel, nuclear technology. When we demonstrate sufficient advancement, they might reveal themselves or activate systems providing information. First contact might occur not with aliens from distant stars, but with Earth's own ancient inhabitants or their descendants. The meaning of life. Philosophical and religious implications are profound. Purpose. If the first civilization engineered Earth or guided human evolution, we might have a designed purpose, perhaps to continue their work, to achieve specific goals they set, or simply to ask the questions they once asked. Origins. Religious creation narratives might be reinterpreted. Gods, who created or shaped humanity, might be first civilization members, with religious traditions preserving distorted memories of actual historical events. Death and afterlife. If the first civilization achieved technological transcendence, consciousness upload, digital immortality, it demonstrates that death needn't be final, that intelligence can persist beyond biological limitations. Existential meaning. We're part of a longer story than we knew. Consciousness on Earth didn't begin with us, and hopefully won't end with us. We're one chapter in a multi-billion-year story of Earth's intelligence exploring existence. The warning. If the first civilization failed, went extinct or was forced to leave, Earth's landmarks might be warning markers showing what not to do. Climate markers indicating dangerous thresholds. Astronomical alignments warning of cosmic threats. Asteroid impacts, solar events. Technological cautionary tales encrypted in structure designs. We'd need to decode these warnings urgently, as we're currently facing similar challenges: climate change, nuclear weapons, asteroid risk, that might have destroyed them. The hope. Alternatively, if they survived and left Earth for other worlds, their landmarks might be signposts showing the path they took, instructions for how to achieve spacefaring civilization and long-term survival. Technologies to develop knowledge, to preserve milestones, to achieve destinations to reach. Following their path might ensure we avoid their mistakes and achieve their successes. The path forward. How to investigate. If we take the first civilization hypothesis seriously, what research program should we pursue? Phase 1. Systematic survey and documentation. Global landmark mapping. Create comprehensive database of all ancient structures, unusual geological features, and archaeological anomalies, including precise GPS coordinates, detailed measurements, dimensions, orientations, alignments, materials analysis, dating using multiple methods, photographic and 3D scanning documentation, pattern analysis, use computational methods, AI, machine learning, statistical analysis to detect patterns across sites, geometric relationships between sites, astronomical alignments, mathematical encoding in dimensions, chemical or isotopic signatures, anomaly flagging, identify sites with characteristics suggesting greater age or advanced technology than currently attributed, erosion patterns inconsistent with accepted dating, precision exceeding known capabilities of builders, materials from distant sources, astronomical knowledge beyond supposed sophistication, Phase 2. Advanced dating and analysis. Improved dating techniques, multiple independent dating methods on same samples, dating of erosion and weathering patterns, analysis of tool marks to infer tool types, geochemical analysis of surfaces, non-invasive investigation, ground-penetrating radar at all major sites, seismic tomography, gravimetric surveys, electromagnetic surveys, LiDAR for discovering hidden structures under vegetation, sample collection, core samples from key geological formations, sediment sampling from various depths and locations, isotopic analysis searching for industrial, signatures phase 3, excavation and exploration, protected location, exploration, Antarctic subglacial surveys and drilling, deep ocean surveys of continental shelves and seamounts, cave and tunnel system exploration, desert subsurface surveys, Sahara, Arabia, Gobi, underwater archaeology, systematic survey of submerged coastlines at various depths, corresponding to sea levels at different historical periods, investigation of specific underwater anomalies, excavation of most promising sites, subsurface investigation at key sites, excavation beneath the Sphinx deep drilling at Göbekli Tepe, Baalbek, Puma Punku, investigation of claimed tunnel networks. Phase 4. Decoding and reverse engineering mathematical analysis. Decode potential mathematical encoding in site dimensions and positions, map all astronomical alignments and determine what they indicate, analyze geometric patterns for information content, engineering studies, reconstruct building techniques through experimental archaeology, reverse engineer possible technological functions, pyramid power plant theories, acoustic properties, etc. Test alternative construction methods, linguistic and symbolic analysis. Study ancient symbols, writing and art for encoded information. Compare symbols across cultures for commonalities. Attempt to decode any messages or data. Phase 5. Synthesis and integration. Interdisciplinary collaboration. Bring together archaeologists, geologists, engineers, astronomers, physicists, biologists, linguists. Share data openly across all institutions and nations. Crowdsource analysis, citizen science projects, public education, documentaries and media presenting evidence fairly, museum exhibits on ancient mysteries, academic programs studying unconventional archaeology, ongoing monitoring. As new technologies develop, better sensors, AI analysis, quantum dating methods, reanalyze existing data, continue global surveys as climate change, development and erosion expose new sites. Funding. This research program would require billions of dollars over decades. Funding sources might include government science budgets, reframing as search for ancient civilizations rather than alien search, private donors, billionaires interested in existential questions, international cooperation, UN-backed program, crowdfunding for specific projects, revenue from documentaries and media about discoveries. Timeline, with adequate funding, major progress could occur within 20-50 years, 10 years, complete global survey and database, 20 years, thorough investigation of highest priority sites, 30 years, Antarctic and deep ocean exploration, yielding major discoveries, 50 years, sufficient data to confirm or refute first civilization hypothesis. Without dedicated effort, discoveries will continue to occur opportunistically but slowly, potentially taking centuries to build comprehensive understanding. The skeptical response. Arguments against intellectual honesty requires presenting the strongest arguments against the first civilization hypothesis. Lack of clear evidence. Despite decades of alternative archaeology research, no indisputable artifact from a pre-human technological civilization has been found. No clearly artificial structures in geological strata millions of years old. No technological devices. No fossils of the first civilization species. Response. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence when preservation is extremely rare and we haven't searched comprehensively. But the burden of proof remains on those claiming the first civilization existed. Mainstream explanations work. For every mysterious ancient site, mainstream archaeology has explanations that don't require lost civilizations. Pyramids built by large labor forces using simple machines, ramps, rollers, levers. Precision achieved through skilled craftsmanship and time, not advanced technology. Astronomical alignments result from careful observation over generations. Similarities across cultures due to diffusion, trade, migration, or convergent development. Response. While mainstream explanations are plausible, some remain controversial even among orthodox archaeologists. The water erosion hypothesis for the Sphinx, for instance, hasn't been definitively refuted. Alternative hypotheses should be investigated rather than dismissed. Occam's razor, the principle that simpler explanations requiring fewer assumptions are more likely to be true. The first civilization hypothesis requires existence of unknown ancient species or civilization, advanced technology leaving minimal traces, conventional geology and archaeology being wrong about multiple dating and interpretation issues, conspiracy or ignorance preventing recognition of evidence. Conventional explanations require only ancient humans were more capable than previously assumed. Some mysteries remain unsolved without requiring extraordinary explanations. Response. Occam's razor is a guideline, not an absolute rule. Sometimes the truth is complex. Also, simpler is subjective. Is it simpler to accept all the coincidences in pyramid placement and design, or to hypothesize deliberate coordination by an earlier civilization? Pattern recognition. Bias. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. We see faces in clouds, hear messages in random noise, find correlations in data where none exist. The claims of global alignment patterns, mathematical encoding, and geometric relationships might be examples of apophenia, seeing meaningful patterns in randomness. Response. True, and this is why rigorous statistical analysis is essential. Some claimed patterns are indeed false, but dismissing all pattern claims as bias throws out potential babies with bathwater. Patterns should be tested statistically, not assumed to be either real or false, based on ideology. Conspiracy theory problems. The first civilization hypothesis is attractive to conspiracy theorists because it implies mainstream science is wrong or hiding truth. This association damages the hypothesis's credibility. Response. Association with conspiracy theories doesn't make an idea false. Mainstream science has been wrong before. Continental drift was ridiculed for decades before acceptance. The question should be addressed on evidence, not on who else believes it. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The first civilization hypothesis is extraordinary, claiming a fundamental revision of human history and Earth's past. Carl Sagan's principle applies. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Response. Agreed. That's why rigorous investigation is needed. If, after thorough investigation, no clear evidence emerges, the hypothesis should be abandoned or relegated to low probability. But investigation must be actually thorough. We haven't yet conducted the research program necessary to definitively test the hypothesis, the god of the gaps. Problem. Invoking the first civilization to explain mysteries is similar to invoking God to explain what science doesn't yet understand. It's an unfalsifiable catch-all that prevents genuine investigation. Response. Valid concern. The hypothesis should make testable predictions and should be abandoned if those predictions fail. It shouldn't be used to lazily explain every mystery without investigation. Synthesis. The skeptical arguments are strong. The first civilization hypothesis remains speculative, with limited hard evidence. However, the hypothesis is not impossible, geologically and biologically plausible, potentially testable through systematic investigation, useful, directing attention to understudied sites and questions. The appropriate stance is open-minded skepticism, unlikely but worth investigating, with willingness to abandon if evidence doesn't materialize, but also willingness to accept if evidence emerges. Closing. Walking on ancient ground. As you settle into sleep tonight, perhaps you'll dream of Earth's deep history, of the first civilization in their prime, whoever and whatever they were, walking the same ground you walk, looking at the same stars you see, asking the same questions you ask about existence, meaning and cosmic purpose. Perhaps you'll dream of their monuments, not the weathered ruins we see today but fresh and new, gleaming in sunlight or under alien skies, serving purposes we can only guess at. Built with knowledge and technology we're only beginning to rediscover, encoding messages in stone and landscape and planetary configuration that wait for us to achieve sufficient wisdom and capability to decode. Perhaps you'll dream of standing before the Great Pyramid not as a tomb or even as a power plant, but as a marker, a signpost. Message saying, we were here. We achieved wonders. We encoded what we learned in stone that will outlast our bodies and our civilizations. Find it. Decode it. Carry it forward. Don't make our mistakes. Reach further than we did. And when you build your own monuments, build them to last eons, so that those who come after you will know you existed and can learn from your legacy. Or perhaps you'll dream of climbing mountains that were carved by ancient hands, swimming in seas that flood ancient cities, walking deserts that hide structures kilometers down in the sand, looking at patterns in Earth's land masses that only reveal themselves from space, seeing the whole planet as a canvas on which the first civilization painted their greatest work, not individual monuments, but Earth itself, shaped and marked, and left as inheritance for whatever intelligence evolved after them. And perhaps as you dream, you'll realize that whether the first civilization existed or not, the question itself transforms how we see our world. Every mountain becomes potentially more than random geology. Every ancient structure becomes potentially more than primitive achievement. Every alignment becomes potentially more than coincidence. The world becomes richer, deeper, more mysterious, more worth exploring and preserving. Because even if we're wrong, even if the pyramids are just tombs, the mountains are just mountains, the alignments are just coincidence. The act of asking the question, of looking deeper, of refusing to accept the simple narratives, leads us to discoveries we wouldn't otherwise make. It leads us to notice the Sphinx's water erosion, to realize Göbekli Tepe is older than it should be, to find underwater cities we didn't know existed, to develop better dating techniques and better archaeological methods. And if we're right, if the first civilization did exist, did shape Earth, did leave landmarks for us to find, then every step we take on this planet is a step on ancient ground. Every breath we breathe is air that passed through their lungs millions of years ago. Every question we ask echoes questions they asked. Every monument we build stands in dialogue with monuments they built. And we are not alone in cosmic time, but part of a story longer and grander than we imagined. A story of intelligence emerging, wondering, creating, failing, succeeding, transforming, transcending, and leaving marks that last billions of years, written in the very face of the planet. Sleep well, inhabitant of Earth, walker of potentially ancient ground, heir to mysteries encoded in stone and landscape. Dream of the first civilization, whoever they were, and know that whether they existed or not, you are part of Earth's ongoing story of intelligence and consciousness, exploring existence, creating beauty, seeking truth, and leaving your own marks for those who come after. Tomorrow you'll wake and see Earth's landmarks with new eyes, the pyramids not just as ancient tombs but as potential markers from incomprehensible antiquity, the mountains not just as geological accidents but as possibly shaped features, the continents not just as random fragments but as potentially designed configurations, and the entire planet not just as our home but as a canvas, a message, a test, or a gift from those who came before us in the deep history of Earth, leaving their works for us to discover when we finally became intelligent enough to recognize them. Good night, seeker of ancient truths. Good night, dweller on potentially designed Earth. Good night, inheritor of mysteries that might be millions or billions of years old. May you dream of deep time and ancient intelligence, of monuments built to outlast mountains and messages encoded in the very shape of the world, of the first civilization watching from whatever realm they inhabit now as we slowly, carefully begin to understand what they left behind. The landmarks stand silent, keeping their secrets. But silence doesn't mean absence. It might just mean we haven't yet learned the language they're speaking. A language of stone and landscape and astronomical precision and mathematical encoding. A language that requires planetary-scale perspective and million-year time scales to understand. A language we're only beginning to speak as we develop the technology and wisdom to see our world as they saw it, to build as they built, to think as they thought, and to finally recognize that we might not be the first to wonder, to question, to build, and to hope that our works will outlast us and speak to intelligences not yet born. The answer waits in the earth beneath your feet. Dream well, and in your dreams perhaps you'll touch the truth that waking investigation seeks, the reality of the first civilization and their legacy written in the landmarks of Earth, waiting for us to finally decode their ancient message and understand our place in the immense story of intelligence on this ancient, marked, mysterious, possibly designed world we call home. Sweet dreams of ancient times and elder builders. May morning bring renewed wonder at the world and determination to explore its deepest mysteries with open minds and rigorous methods, seeking truth wherever it leads, whether to confirmation that Earth's landmarks were naturally formed and built by the civilizations we know, or to the revolutionary discovery that we walk on ground shaped by the first civilization, inheriting a planet they designed and marked for purposes we're only beginning to comprehend. Sleep well. The landmarks endure, the mysteries remain, and tomorrow the search continues. Good night.